Have you ever heard the eerie whispers of the forest at night? The kind that sends chills down your spine and makes you feel like you're not alone? Those whispers have a name: Wendigo. It's not just a creature or a monster from folklore. It's something far more sinister, something that represents the darkness that lurks within human nature. Today we're going to dive deep into some terrifying encounters that people have had with this flesh-eating monster. Get ready, because this isn't for the faint-hearted. Before we delve into the stories, let's talk about what a Wendigo really is. Originating from the folklore of the Algonquian-speaking tribes, the Wendigo is a malevolent spirit that preys on the vulnerable. Often described as a tall, emaciated figure with a heart of ice, a Wendigo is said to be the embodiment of hunger, an insatiable craving for human flesh. But it's not just any hunger. It's a hunger that grows stronger with every person it consumes. Some describe the creature as having a gaunt and skeletal appearance with ash-gray skin stretched tight over its bones. Its eyes glow with an eerie yellow light, and its lips are often blood-stained, pulled back in a gruesome grin. Its smell? A combination of decaying flesh and pine. Truly, the scent of death in the wilderness. But how does a Wendigo come to be? According to legend, a person becomes a Wendigo when they indulge in the ultimate taboo: cannibalism. In times of famine or extreme starvation, when survival becomes a desperate game, those who turn to cannibalism in the wilderness are said to be transformed into this monstrosity. From there, the hunger consumes them, twisting them into a supernatural predator that never stops feeding. The terrifying part? Wendigos are known to possess a terrifying ability to whisper in the minds of those who are weak, compelling them to kill and consume human flesh. And that's just the beginning of their reign of terror. Our first story comes from the cold, unyielding woods of northern Minnesota. There, a seasoned hunter named Daniel shared a spine-chilling encounter that changed his life forever. Daniel had been out hunting alone, as he'd done 100 times before. The snow crunched under his boots as he made his way deeper into the forest, tracking a deer. As evening fell and the shadows grew long, he heard something that made his blood run cold. A faint voice calling his name: Daniel. He stopped in his tracks. He was miles away from the nearest town, and no one else was supposed to be out there. The voice was weak, almost a whisper, like someone struggling to speak. Against his better judgment, Daniel followed the sound. He moved cautiously, rifle at the ready as the voice grew louder, but something was off. It was like an echo, not coming from any particular direction. It felt all around him. Suddenly, he saw a figure standing just beyond the clearing. It was tall, unnaturally thin and pale, almost blending in with the snow. Daniel's breath hitched as he tried to make out the features of the thing standing before him. Its eyes glowed a sickly yellow, and its mouth stretched into a disturbing grin. The voice he'd been hearing, it was coming from the creature's gaping maw. Daniel, hungry, so hungry. Panicked, Daniel raised his rifle, but the creature moved so fast, faster than anything he'd ever seen. It was inches away in an instant, towering over him, its stench of rotting meat overwhelming. He stumbled back, firing blindly. The creature let out an ear-piercing shriek and darted into the trees, vanishing like a nightmare that never was. Daniel didn't wait to see if it would come back. He ran until his lungs burned, not stopping until he reached his truck. For years, he refused to talk about what he saw. He quit hunting and moved to a different town. The memory still haunts him to this day. What he encountered in those woods wasn't just a creature. It was something much darker, something that seemed to hunger not just for his flesh, but for his very soul. Our next story takes us to the heart of Canada's wilderness. Three friends, Liam, Kate, and Mason, decided to rent a cabin for a winter getaway. The cabin was isolated, surrounded by dense forest, and miles away from civilization. It was perfect for a quiet weekend, or so they thought. On the second night, a snowstorm trapped them inside. As the wind howled outside, the friends huddled around the fireplace, telling stories to pass the time. That's when they heard it, something scratching at the door. Liam cautiously opened it, only to find a set of strange tracks in the snow, long, bony prints leading away from the cabin into the darkness. But the prints weren't from any animal he'd ever seen. They were too big, too human-like. As the night wore on, the temperature inside the cabin dropped. They stoked the fire, but it didn't help. The air felt suffocating, almost like they were being watched. Kate claimed she saw something moving just outside the window, but Mason brushed it off his nerves. Then came the knocking. It was slow, deliberate, almost polite. Liam hesitated, then threw open the door. Nothing. Just the howling wind and those same tracks leading further into the woods. Annoyed and on edge, they decided to turn in for the night, but sleep didn't come easily. Around 3 a.m., Kate woke up to a strange wet sound. She turned on her flashlight and froze. The window next to her bed was open, and a figure was leaning halfway inside, its face inches from hers. It was emaciated, skin stretched tight over its skull. Its mouth hung open, a dark,
Kate, let me
cavern of hunger, and those glowing yellow eyes stared into her soul. "Let me in," it whispered, voice hoarse and broken. Kate screamed, scrambling back. The creature lunged, its skeletal fingers clawing at the windowsill. Liam and Mason rushed in, slamming the window shut just as the creature's hand was nearly inside. They barricaded the window and huddled together, praying for dawn. When the first light of morning broke, the tracks around the cabin were gone, no signs of any creature. But the window frame was splintered, the glass cracked where something powerful had tried to get in. They left that morning, never looking back. Even now, years later, Kate swears,
Kate, let me in.
Voice on stormy nights, "Let me in." The last story takes us to a long-abandoned mine deep in the forests of Alberta. The mine had been closed for decades, ever since a group of miners mysteriously disappeared without a trace. The locals believed the mine was cursed, a place of bad omens, but that didn't stop a few brave or foolish souls from venturing inside. 3 teenagers, Jake, Ryan, and Emma, decided to explore the mine one summer armed with flashlights and a camera. They thought it would be a fun adventure, maybe even capture something supernatural on film. But what they found was beyond their worst nightmares. The mine was pitch black, the air heavy and stale. As they ventured deeper, they stumbled upon old mining equipment, rusted and broken. That's when Emma noticed something strange. Long, claw-like marks gouged into the stone walls. The marks were deep and deliberate, not something any normal animal could make. Suddenly, a foul smell filled the air like rotten meat left out in the sun. Jake gagged, covering his nose, but it was too late. A low growl echoed through the mine, followed by a guttural voice. Hungry, they turned, flashlights swinging wildly, and there it was. A gaunt skeletal figure hunched over and glaring at them with glowing eyes. Its mouth opened impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. It moved slowly at first, savoring the fear in their eyes. Then it lunged. The teens screamed, running blindly through the tunnels. Emma tripped, her camera skidding across the floor. Ryan grabbed her, pulling her to her feet, but the creature was right behind them. It was so close they could feel its cold breath on their necks. Just when they thought it was over, a loud rumbling shook the mine. The ceiling collapsed, blocking the creature's path. They didn't wait to see if it could dig through. They ran until they burst out into the sunlight, gasping for air. When they looked back, the entrance to the mine was buried under tons of rock. But Emma swears she saw something, those glowing eyes staring out from a small gap, watching, waiting. They never went back, but the story spread like wildfire. People say that on quiet nights you can still hear the Wendigo's growls echoing from the depths of the earth, its hunger eternal, its hunt never-ending. These are just a few of the bone-chilling encounters with the Wendigo, a creature that embodies the darkest parts of human nature. Whether it's stalking the woods, lurking outside your window, or trapped in the depths of an abandoned mine, the Wendigo is always hungry. And if you ever find yourself
Hungry, so hungry.
a faint whisper calling your name, run. Because if it's a Wendigo, it won't stop until it devours your flesh and your soul.